Welcome, everybody. Really happy to have you here for the next installment of the Toronto District School Board and Ontario Institute for Studies in Education webinar series on environmental and sustainability ed. We had a bit of a break in April because we condensed all of the webinars into our national conference on environmental education, along with EcoSchools Canada, Natural Curiosity, and Ecom. And what a fantastic conference it was. Thank you to all of you who might have joined us for that. It was just a fantastic few days of learning, but we did take a break on these webinars, but we're back up and running. And we've got a couple of webinars scheduled for May that I'll share with you in a minute. And also we've got some coming up in June and probably into July, in fact, as well too, just to keep all of us, busy while we're at home. My name's Hillary Inwood. I am lead of environmental and sustainability ed, and I hear getting a new title as sustainability coordinator for OISE at the University of Toronto, which is our Faculty of Education. I'm happy to work in partnership with the TDSB's EcoSchools team. I'd like to introduce you to Jen Vetter and to Chris Metropolis, who are with us in the room today, who are helping out behind the scenes for this webinar. And I feel very honored to work with this incredible team. We've got Karen Dobrucki and Gail Bornstein. I'll introduce them formally in a minute. They're our presenters from today, who are also members of the EcoSchools team. And I feel really lucky to have worked with these people for so long. So today we are talking about cultivating green school grounds, and we hope to introduce you to some of the incredible work that's being done in the Toronto District School Board when it comes to making schoolyards really fantastic places for learning. And that's very different from the kind of schoolyards that most of us grew up in, which were not such great places for learning, but looked a lot more like prison yards with all the chain link fence and all the asphalt. So fortunately, thanks to many organizations, including the work of Evergreen, which has been a longstanding partner of the TDSB, the schoolyards are changing for the better. So this is what you can expect over the next little while. We're just finishing off the welcome, and I'm going to do a land acknowledgement to begin. And then I'm going to introduce you to Gail Bornstein and Karen Dobrucki, who are going to lead today's session. And we'll end up today with certainly an introduction to some of the upcoming events. We do encourage you to make this session as interactive as possible. We would love it if you pop your questions and your comments, share resources or ideas in the chat as we go along, and we'll collect all those together and share a resource list at the end of today's session. So with that in mind, we're going to move on to our land acknowledgement. And in the past, we've been bringing you artworks as an inspiration made by Indigenous artists to go along with the TDSB's land acknowledgement. But today I thought we'd do something a little bit different as we're talking about school grounds and school gardens. I thought I'd bring an example of an Indigenous garden set up by Indigenous educators at one of the TDSB's school properties. This is found at the Beckford Center. And it's set up by a group that's been recently founded here in the GTA called Minican, excuse me, I mispronounced that. This garden, as I said, was founded at the Beckford Center, which is actually one of the TDSB's adult learning centers. It was designed and planted by Minican, and Minican means the seed in Ojibwe. And it grows, this organization grows Indigenous gardens that feed people and feed pollinators and help to beautify urban landscapes. Minican's gardens invite curiosity and demonstrate Indigenous agroecology teachings, and they cultivate relationships between people and plants by teaching and learning about foods, medicines, and habitats. And Minican was founded by chef Joel Whiteduck, who is owner of a group in the city that does catering. It's called Nishtish, and it's a fantastic Indigenous-run catering company, and also Lara Morosky. So with that in mind, I'm going to just read the TDSB's land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are hosted on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. We know that land acknowledgements are not the end of the work that we need to do in decolonization and reconciliation, and certainly the work that we do on the land with educational gardening and with developing schoolyards can contribute to that. So we hope that you're here to learn, and maybe we'll take action in that regard moving forward. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can introduce our presenters. And I'm going to introduce you first to Gail Bornstein. Gail joined Evergreen as the school ground design consultant at the Toronto District School Board in the Eco Schools program in 2011. And she's currently the TDSB's Business Process Analyst of School Grounds. She holds degrees in biology and a Master of Landscape Architecture. She has extensive design and planning experience working for municipalities, the Ministry of the Environment, environmental consulting firms, and a landscape architecture firm. Gail's passionate about fostering a love of nature on school grounds by designing ecological spaces that are child-centered with an emphasis on planting trees for shade and active play areas. Gail works closely with school communities to help them realize their vision for creating rich play learning environments on their school grounds. And we're really thrilled to have you here today, Gail. I'd also like to introduce you to our second presenter, and that is Karen Dobrucki. And Karen is a Green Projects team leader on school grounds with the Toronto District School Board. She's been working as one of the sustainability office's Green Projects team leaders for about 2.5 years. And previous to this, she owned her own landscape design company for 17 years and concurrently worked with Evergreen as the Toronto Catholic District School Board's school grounds design consultant. And she did that for about a decade. Karen holds degrees in business management and landscape architecture and is a self-proclaimed tree hugger. I join you in that, Karen. Karen feels extremely fortunate to be expanding the urban tree canopy on school grounds and lives by the saying, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time is now. So with that in mind, welcome to both Gail and to Karen, and I'm going to turn things over to you.
Thank you very much, Hillary. That was lovely. And I'm going to now share my screen because Karen and I have some slides that we'd like to share with the audience. And I'd like to also thank everybody who's joined this. We're pretty excited to be sharing some of our ideas and some of the work that we do. This is a pretty broad overview of TDSB schools and what we do at these schools. We want to talk about the schools, the uniqueness of each school ground, the scale of our projects, and some of the programs. And as Hillary mentioned, we're happy to have you interrupt. We want this to be very casual and to have it really to be kind of a conversation. So Karen and I are going to go back and forth as we present. So just to give you a little bit more information on what Karen and I do. Hope it's okay, Karen, I'm going to speak for you quickly. Karen is Green Projects team leader, oversees all of the large tree planting, which is very extensive at the board, the outdoor seating program, food gardens, and Karen is going to talk about all of this, and bike racks and water refill stations. These are just some of our responsibilities. What I'm primarily involved in is in-house design build projects at the board. So I work really closely with another landscape architect and Robert Cram, and with TDSB construction for childcares, kindergartens and junior outdoor spaces, as well as some very specialized projects. We do work on developing school ground resources and construction details. We'll show you examples of some of those. And I work closely with Karen, Eco Schools, and TDSB Design. So here's a map of the TDSB and the 580 schools at the TDSB. So the yellow dots are the elementary schools. The purple magenta dots are the secondary schools. And I think at last count, we were at 580 schools. So this is really to give you, it's a really, as most of you know, you work often, you work here, not often, but it's a huge school board. And it's we're the largest in Canada, I think the third or fourth in North America. So it's a lot of ground to cover. we love doing our jobs, but it's a lot of schools. And this is Karen's work.
Well, as you can see, we are obviously embedded into the city of Toronto, and the Toronto's urban tree canopy is pretty extensive as well. We've got lots of valleys, and we are very much a part of that. We estimate that our trees, the last time we estimated, it was about 36,000 trees. So we are virtually the size of a small city, and that is something that we try to manage the best we can with the resources we can, especially when it's spread over, as Gail said, over 550 sites. So you can just see just how extensive the work can be, and but we're always trying to improve and looking to find new sites every time, and different strategies for planting as well. So yeah.
So although there are similarities with our school grounds, each one is quite unique. So I thought we would use an example. This is Galloway. Depending on the scale, Galloway is in Scarborough. It's larger. It's a suburban school. So it's got this field. It has, asphalt curtain right here. There's a kindergarten space. And often when we're going to a school, we'll look at an area, especially with COVID, we look at an aerial image to just get an overall sense of what's going on or what's there. When we started to work with Galloway, we went to the site. It had very dated play structures, as you can see here, the top right. The bottom, what you'll see at most of the TDSB schools is a really well-treed front area. I mean, that was the practice in the 50s, earlier than that. They tended to plant a lot of trees to make it look aesthetically great, and all the shade was at the front of the schools. The benefit for us now is when we are when we're designing a lot of kindergarten spaces now, we try to take advantage of the front because it's well-established tree canopies that provide a lot of shade. The disadvantage for excavating or providing play features is we don't want to excavate under tree canopies. So it's great to have the shade, but we don't want to be digging and destroying any trees. So a little bit of detail. So again, I often refer to school grounds as pieces of a puzzle because there's a lot of them, and really trying to get a sense of the overall site conditions. Often I say it's a bit like a house or an apartment. The infrastructure of that site needs to work. It needs to drain. Because if things don't work on the site, you can add all kinds of, play and greening opportunities, but if the main backbone of that site is failing, then that needs to be fixed. So in the case of Galloway, the front looks great. There was a really small fenced-in kindergarten area that was not sufficient. The space was too small. There weren't any play opportunities. The asphalt was here and in very poor condition. The field was in pretty good shape. Now, often, we talk about providing the maximum number of greening opportunities, but it is important to have hard surfaces at schools. We need those because there's a lot of games that are played on hard surfaces. There's times during the year when students can't access the field. It's too muddy, it's too icy. So the asphalt needs to be in good condition. There's, often basketball's played, line games, things like that. So that needs to be kept in good shape as well. So in the case of Galloway, because there were what we call site condition issues, the infrastructure was not in good shape. There was a landscape architect retained by the board to produce what's called a master plan, and this is it. And this is really an overall vision for the site. It doesn't mean that all of what you see on the screen will be built or installed. It's very much fund dependent or funds available dependent. So in the case of Galloway, the parking lot was redone. It was in really poor shape. The asphalt was redone. There was some really nice line painting. Basketball was added. This is a very high need school. The kindergarten area we designed, and that's going to be installed this year. They were given new play equipment. This area here was not built out because there wasn't enough money, frankly, to do that. And the front area here, although lovely, was also not done. So I'm going to turn it back over to Karen just to talk about some of her programs and how Karen really provides a lot of much needed support for this master plan work.
Mm-hmm. So what? Yeah, thank you, Gail. Yeah, so I work with individual schools, but it seems to me that since I started working here, a lot of my programs are also being used to support these master plan projects. So basically, you look at this huge master plan site or master planned project, and you can only imagine the budget for it. And so what my programs I'm able to do is supplement some of my money or my programs to support the master plan. So trees have been designated or located, and I can go in and through my tree planting program, we have our trees are supplied by from the city. So we have been working, have a relationship for a long time with the city who supplies us the trees. And then we have, unfortunately, not unfortunately for us, unfortunately for schools, that trees of a certain caliper or a certain size must be installed by TDSB staff. So that's much to the chagrin of most people, because it's unfortunate that schools always want to plant trees. It's a way for students to connect with their schoolyards, but unfortunately that piece is not they're now not able to do. So it's the stewardship piece that we have to engage our students with, the tree planting or the tree part. So anyways, that was one of my programs, is that what I would go in after the fact, after the Galloway project, and then I would be able to install the trees through my program. As well as, and you can see, yeah, there's some other sites, but and also as far as other elements that they would not normally have gotten. So for instance, through our bike rack program and supporting our active transportation piece of what we provide, is that we would go in and put in the bike racks for that project as well. So these are the pieces that usually get cut from a bigger project, because they have to focus on the bigger infrastructure pieces, and I'm able to go in and support the school to give them the parts that and the support that they to kind of complete more of the master plan. If you can go back to the Galloway drawing, so you'll see that what we do is we work with the landscape architects, and they will look for areas and they will establish areas of seating, and you can see all these areas of seating. And what we can do is through our sawmill program, we run a sawmill. I don't know if anybody knows that out in the Civic out in West End. So we actually in the past used to when everybody I'm sure has heard about the emerald ash borer and how they've devastated our ash trees. So that program was established with the idea to repurpose the dead ash trees and to turn them into log benches for our schools. So we've been able to provide that, but we're coming to the end of our ash trees. So we've developed a relationship. We've developed a relationship that allows us to tap into the city's log depots. So we are able to continue with this program using city's logs for that. So we've got a great supply of that, and we're continuing to make log benches. And so that's something that we can offer any schools anytime. So anybody who's looking to create outdoor seating, they're able to contact me, and we put them on there's a list. So we do have to prioritize, because there's a lot of demand, and we can only produce so many, but we are looking to support that. So thank you for the picture, Gail. That is one of a sample of, and as you can see how we use our tree planting to provide shade in this area. So we can actually build some pretty decent outdoor learning spaces just with log benches and trees, which becomes very reasonable and cost effective for schools. So we can work with that and target areas with the schools. And it's kind of we can work with the big master plans, but we can also work with schools to create these secondary spaces to help you support some of your other projects that you might want to be able to do a little bit more of a hands-on approach to it. So.
And Karen, we had a question in the chat from Michelle, who just asks, how would one go about getting a bench for your school? Do you need to have a master plan for the school before you can start adding furniture in?
No, and that's the nice thing. So basically, you contact me, so you can contact me, and it's what we do is we run our sawmill from about January to March. January, March, we run it for about 3 months, and whatever we make, so we have ideas of how many we can produce, and then it's usually we try to make it as equitable as possible. So sometimes it's a first come first serve depending on the numbers and how many we produce. And then it's a matter of, yeah, we look at the equitability of this, and when was, have you got other seating on site? So there's lots of other pieces to it. But yeah, we can definitely work with you, and we are definitely trying to get live benches at whoever wants them. So,
and I think you've intrigued people with the mention of the sawmill. Sunday's asked the question about whether there might be chips that come out of that sawmill.
there, you know what, we produce, when you have the number of trees that we have, our sawmill does not produce chips, but we seem to have a lot of chips because we do work with tree service companies. Like for our large, we've got trees coming down all the time. Not all of it is usable for us for these live benches. Sometimes the wood is just too rotted or it's not appropriate for turning into live benches. So it is chipped and it is stored at one of our depots. There Sunday, if you do need some chips, let me know and I can talk to your grounds team leader and see if they can work something out. So we usually have more than we want. We don't love wood chips, to be honest with you, and usually people get them because they're free, but honestly they're problematic because they get into our catch basin. So if you can see this picture, you can see the type of mulch that we typically like. It's the shredded mulch. It's a little bit more fine. It knits together. But in some situations we could look at wood chips, and certainly for our educational partners like Green Thumbs Growing Kids, we do look to support them with product as well. So Sunday, let me know.
Okay, it's the bike racks, Karen, but you mentioned that.
Oh yeah, so the bike rack. So we do, as you can see, we've got lots of different styles of bike racks here. We are through our pro. We've kind of standardized it a little bit, at least for the time being. But we definitely are trying to, as I said, support active transportation. So ideally, through Eco Schools, you can actually put in an application to receive a free bike rack. I think they're open right now. Jen might be able to speak a little bit to that if that's up and running, because we've a program for that specifically. Ideally, we want to be able to see that you are working towards supporting your school in encouraging and supporting schools with that. So the bike rack's kind of the finalized piece to support you guys with that. But anyways, yep. So definitely take advantage of the opportunity to apply for a bike rack. What else?
Do you want me to? Okay, so I think I'm going to just jump in. We have very much a team approach. We work with schools to develop designs. This is an example of an outdoor kindergarten area in reference to Galway, but we've done, I think, over 200 of these types of designs, which we've developed with schools. They do take time. It probably takes at least, I would say at least a year, if not more, to work with a school, to get all the pieces in place and then to have it built. But this is an example of a design that is being installed this summer, actually. And often when we present the design, we give an image board of some of our features. So this particular design has climbing post. Almost all of our kindergartens have sand. We feel it's really important. They need to be accessible. This is an accessible transfer station, so somebody in a wheelchair can get into that sandbox. We have tables. We have what we developed, we call it a mud kitchen, and they're Rubbermaid totes that can easily be taken out and anything can be put in them. This is tempered glass, and the beauty of it is that students can draw on it on both sides, and it's very easy to clean. We have a stage and a chalk wall and Karen's log benches, all in mulch. Stages seem really popular.
Oh, and don't forget about the container.
Thank you, Karen. What a team. So storage is key. It's really key for all kinds of loose parts. Some have wheeled toys. So almost all of our outdoor spaces, particularly kindergartens, childcares have an amazing amount of stuff. So outdoor storage is really, really important. And we try to work it into new fencing wherever we can to get storage. Mm-hmm. There's different types of storage. As I often say, beauty's in the eyes of the beholder. This one is a reused shipping container. It's from Secure Container, but some schools prefer concrete ones.
Mhm.
It's very much up to
And I
the
sorry
school.
when everybody's saying so I'm reading the chats and people are saying storage is key and think about gardening and what
Yes,
tools and equipment you need. So think about even when we talk a little bit about gardening, think about where you're going to
storage.
storage of your tools and stuff. So
Yeah,
it's
I agree.
it definitely covers a lot of territory for that.
It really is the infrastructure that's needed. Yeah. We're working with new designer, new landscape architect. So we are constantly looking to improve our designs, making them more readable. And Robert produces beautiful designs. This is another one for a kindergarten area that's being built this summer. And lots of tree cover. Again, there's sand. There was a bit of a hill here. This is all accessible, which is really important. I think there was a question about creating paths and how they're accessible. I think that was one of the questions that came in prior to this presentation. Perhaps not the greenest solution, but the most accessible one is asphalt. It's also the easiest to take care of because it can be easily shoveled. In the wintertime, that is a consideration. Limestone screenings are used depending, where it is on the school grounds. Mulch is fine, has to be replenished. I think I was asked flagstone. If flagstone is used, we generally don't use flagstone. A few reasons for that. It's expensive to install, not very easy to maintain, great to maintain in a residential setting, not so easy to maintain in school grounds. So we generally don't use stone. We're sometimes asked about pavers, unilock, really labor intensive to install, which means that it's very expensive. So those are the different pathways that are used, but accessibility is key and it's law. We have to really think about making all of the features as much as we can accessible. So again, another example of an image board. We've started to use these shade sails. Shade is key. It's a safety consideration. Students need to be protected from really strong UV rays. And as much as we all love trees, we do, sometimes trees just don't provide enough shade for about 10 years. So that's an important consideration, is that in some cases, we need to provide instant shade. And that's why we use things like shade sails and shade structures. I think you've seen some of these features before. This is a new one. We call this our music wall. It's a backdrop so that staff can constantly be changing what goes onto this backdrop. You can put spoons on, pots and pans. It can be a xylophone, but it's flexible and it can be changed over time. And this is a climbing wall.
Gail, there's a question from Greg about whether a school can order the mud kitchen that you got pictured there separately from having a master plan that would include one.
Yeah, just to clarify, not every school, and I don't work on master plans, so I don't want to give the message that you need a master plan. You don't. Schools don't need master plans. When we go in and do our designs, they're not master plans. In terms of ordering features, we generally, here's the rule of thumb. Any changes to the school ground, we ask for a design consultation. So that's just because it allows us to help you locate any of the features that you may want. Plus, the mud kitchen, in terms of ordering it, it's custom and it's built by carpenters. So we can certainly help you locate it, and it would need to be done through a school-funded request. I don't want to get into all the processes, but we'll certainly help you with it. But there is a pretty hefty queue in terms of what construction can build and install in a year. So, yeah.
And then a second question from Stephanie about the tempered glass art wall. Love that idea, by the way. But wondering if that creating a lockbox around it would make sense so that people, who are not part of the school community might come in with permanent markers or spray paint. That would mean that the kids can't use it. Is that a good idea to build a lockbox around it?
I appreciate the question. We haven't had this happen. The one thing we had happen once, Jen might remember, is we had some inappropriate graphics done on a chalk wall. And that was dealt with obviously very quickly. We haven't had any of the tempered glass walls tampered with. So yeah, we just haven't had it happen.
Great. Excellent. That's really good to hear.
Yeah.
How about the chalkboards? There was a question from Luna earlier about whether chalkboards are currently being installed.
All the time. Many, many, many. Yes, we generally, they're almost part of every kindergarten space, lots of outdoor learning spaces, many. We are trying to figure out ways to make the paint last longer, because generally the chalk boards themselves need to be repainted every couple of years.
Right.
We're,
And then
we're caught,
the big question is about costs. Is there a cost list that teachers are?
Oh, yes, great question. We get asked it all the time. We generally don't give out cost lists. A couple of reasons why. You know, because we're trying to really help schools with the location of these features, it can be deceiving to give out costs because installation is involved. So, you know, if it's a very small feature, yes, we can provide you with the cost, but we don't tend to provide cost lists to schools. And they also change every year. The unit prices are updated every year. So I'm just going to go through some examples of of schools that we've done. This is O'Connor. Pretty sad state of affairs before we got there. None of this existed. And we put in climbing features. We put in a very large shade structure in sand. This was an experiment, which this was for a special needs kindergarten area that had to be totally accessible, and it was on a hill. And we wanted lots of planting, very tactile, very much a sensory garden. So it's fully accessible. We built a tree lookout. Luckily, we did it a few years ago because now we need pretty extensive tree permits. And we worked with a landscape architect and provided shade. We're pretty happy with how it came out. And again, it was really key that this was fully accessible. This was just finished. We use stone wherever we can. The beauty of Armor Stone, a few things, is that the TDSB does an incredible job of installing it. You can't fit anything between these stones. It's really nice for seating. It will be there forever. That is the beauty of Armor Stone. And this isn't quite finished. There will be cedar planks above this. We've got seating here and shade, what we call a zigzag log, and again, the mud kitchen.
And so, Gail, these are expensive projects. So Michelle's asked a question, Melanie has asked a question in the chat about whether or not there's any grants available currently for this kind of work in schoolyards.
It's a great question. There are some grants. They're not as many as there used to be. We also often help schools. We have a small pool of money, and we help schools with these projects. We don't expect them. Almost none of them are fully funded by the school. We would never expect that, but we're really trying to work with schools to improve their play spaces. So we.
And I know that the city, in some regards, you do have to contact your city councilor in your school's area, sometimes can find money that's connected to the fees that developers pay as they work on.
Yes, Section 37. So here's the beauty and the drag, frankly, of Section 37. So the great thing about Section 37 is, it can come from development. Sometimes it can be quite significant. And the drag of it can take a really long time to get. So what has to happen is city council has to approve what is submitted. So let's say a school asks for $50,000 for school grounds, and there's designs have to be submitted with that and costing, and then city council has to approve it. It then has to go to the legal departments of both the Toronto Lands Corporation of the board. It's like an arm's length organization that works with the city on things like that. And they have to work on the legalities of the community use agreement. And then we have to get the money. So you're looking at probably 2 years. I mean, it's worth it, of course, but it can be a pretty long process. Yeah. This is another program another kindergarten that we did. The schools themselves attach these things to what we call the music wall. These are stock tanks. Karen's going to talk about these more and this was in the chat as well, this is often what we suggest for raised planters. And the reason why we suggest them is they're really easy to order. You know, we have a resource that we can readily supply to you. You can contact the supplier, drill a few holes in the bottom. They can be painted. You'll see images of that. Really easy to plant and really easy to take care of. So that's why we're often recommending these stock tanks. This is going to be a willow tunnel in the future. And then again, these are some of the features that you've seen before, the tables that we often put in the mud kitchen. And this is another. And this, again, there's storage that we talked about. There's the chalkboard that you talked about, a stage, and a pegboard at the back.
One thing, Gail, you might want to, at that last picture, you show some very large tires. Are you still?
Yes. Oh, good question. Thanks, Karen. Nice prompt. So tires, if you want them, we will provide them. but there have been concerns from a couple of schools in terms of the health aspects of the tires. So it's very much a choice on the school's part should they want them installed. They're very safe. They've been fully checked. They're often, and they need to be in shade. That is really critical. The kind of tires that you see in there are very large that can't be moved, but they can't be in a full sun situation because it's black rubber and it will get very, very hot. So yeah, thanks, Karen. Here's an example of a project we're working on. Really old structure. We don't ever install structures on hills. They need to be flat. This one wasn't. And you can see, this is what I was talking about at the beginning, all kinds of site issues. You know, sand and asphalt don't mix well. It's really slippery. It's dangerous. So we want to try to avoid this kind of thing. We need to provide some retention here. They wanted a new play structure. You can see storage here. So we really did a complete redesign for this. And that's what the design looks like. So Karen's going to help us with all the tree planting that you see here. We're going to put in stone retaining walls. There's going to be a really large sand box that's accessible. There's going to be a stage, and there's going to be a new play structure. We're pretty excited to see this plan. That's going to go in this summer.
So a good question came up earlier in the chat about the play structures and how you mitigate safety issues with them.
Great question. Nothing gets installed at the board that does not meet Canadian safety standards. Everything is checked. Every single project that we do, if it has any kind of climbing, whether it's with a purchased play structure or whether it's an in-house designed structure, you know, the climbing post, we bring in a TDSB retained play inspector, and that particular project cannot be open until it passes inspection. And all TDSB structures are inspected about at least twice a year, quarterly. We're replacing many because many are no longer passing code. We can't, frankly, keep up, but we are replacing as many as we can, as fast as we can. It's generally not just the play, structure that needs to be replaced because there's the area around it. There's a lot of other considerations, and it has to be accessible now. So it becomes a larger project.
Yeah, I think anytime you have any kind of play structures like that, even the log poles, and they may look very simple, but there's what you think is just mulch around the base is not mulch. It's actually an engineered wood safety surfacing that is a system that requires drainage. So there's more to meets the eye, and sometimes those are the expensive pieces of the whole project. So yeah, it's a bigger picture usually than just what you normally see. So hence the requirement of not a master plan, but of a planned scape for these ones.
Yeah, we didn't, Karen and I may not have said it, but we'll say it again at the end. It's a bit like doing a research paper. A lot of front end work before that, your hands get to the tabs on the computer. And it's the same with design, and it's the same with any planning. We can't, say it as much as possible, do your front end planning. Mm-hmm. It really pays off in the end. Mm-hmm. And some of these projects are, Friday spelling tests, and some of them are, research papers, and some of them are master thesis and PhDs. Master plans tend to be in the PhD end of things, but I'm just saying, like, they really do need front end planning, and they require a lot of patience. So this is, we can't say enough about sand. We love sand. Kids love sand. It's a really important tactile thing. It's the one thing that really allows children to manipulate their environment. So,
well, we've had a couple of questions about flexibility and manipulation of these schoolyards once they've been installed.
okay.
One question is around the tires. Can they be
Sure.
used as planters, and can they be moved around the schoolyard if you want once they've been installed, or no?
Well, it's possible. I mean, it's a great question. Sure. They're really big, so they're going to probably need equipment. You certainly can't. I would not want to see anyone get hurt trying to move them around. So, they're not like loose parts. They're pretty hefty. Once you've got them planted, it's going to be tricky to move them.
So the tires are too big really to be used for loose parts play, is what you're telling us.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of planting, we would not recommend any food be planted in them. You can do other types of planting, but not food.
And in terms of small plantings, it's been my experience that schools can buy those smaller plants, not large scale trees, but they can buy shrubs and flowers and things themselves. They don't need to go through the TDSB for that.
Yeah, shrubs are tricky, just because, in our experience, they're lovely, but, they can often get loved to death. And sometimes, love to death. There you go. So I'll just leave it at that. What did Bruce used to say? Trees and rocks. Yeah, but so I'll go through these pretty quickly, but it goes to what Karen was saying. This is the kind of design consideration that goes into something that you're seeing on the ground. So these are climbing posts. These are the construction details that we were talking about developing. And I think we're up to maybe 35 of them now. And we're constantly looking at producing more of them because we want to add more features to our school grounds. And that's what they look like when they're in. And this is the safety surface Karen was talking about. These are, seems really straightforward log benches, but this is the detail for it. We have found over time, we no longer put log benches on the ground. We used to, even with limestone screenings, but what we're finding with experience is they're rotting too quickly. So all of our log benches now are going on feet or cradles. And this is what they look like. These are what, these are the feet I'm referring to. And this is new. We're kind of excited about this. This is what, it's a lobster trap. We call it a lobster trap. It's a pilot. We did this at one of our schools at O'Connor. This is a bit regular. It'll be a little random on the next one, but it's a new feature because often we get asked by schools if there can be wood play features, and the play equipment suppliers don't supply them anymore. It's all steel and plastic. So this was an opportunity for us to come up with some of our own. Seems to be pretty popular. And again, they're inspected. They have to meet all the safety requirements.
And yeah, we've had a great question from Anya asking about whether you're finding you're making different recommendations for this kind of playground structure based on what we know of COVID now.
That's a great question. You mean in terms of probably spacing? We haven't changed our designs. I suppose Karen might pipe in. We are looking at spacing with respect to outdoor seating, but not so much in terms of our play areas. And perhaps that's because these were designed before COVID, but even still, they haven't changed that much. I'm a little, anyway, I should be careful, but who knows if, these are expensive to install, and if we make them reflect the safety requirements of COVID and then it's no longer around, that's not really a sustainable solution, is it? So that's our concern with that. These are new features that we did at Mount View Alternative at Runnymede. It's what we call the falling logs. I think they've been painted since this was put in. And I'm going to turn this over to Karen to talk about food gardens.
So, I mean, I think as far as when schools are looking to try to do something that they feel that they can do in a short time. Maybe some more quick wins. Now, there's different levels when I say that, but um, basically, I know that there's a lot of interest, and I've been getting, and Gail, and we've both been getting a lot of interest in food gardens. And of course, these come in at many, many different scales. And we currently have a few, three or four educational partnerships with Green Thumbs Growing Kids and Sundays Here, Pact, and Food Share, where we have some urban farms on some of our sites, and they operate pretty extensive food gardens, and that's at a very large scale. And they also offer fee for service programs to support other schools as well. So that's at a very high, large scale level. But then we have some incredible teachers doing some incredible things, and we cannot even get close to talking about all that's happening on site. But we wanted to do a shout out to Dan Kananik at Don Mills Collegiate, who runs the Green Technologies program, and he's been extraordinary in establishing incredible gardens, a vineyard, aquaponics. I didn't know whether I should mention this, but there's a pizza oven in this space. So it's not happened overnight. This has evolved over many, many years. It's a learning process for everybody, but he certainly has set some precedents for what some pretty cool things that can happen on a site. But that is a lot of a dedication on his part and his students. This operates pretty much through the whole summer. Once you have a garden like this, it's running through the summer. So those are always huge considerations when you're doing it. I don't. Okay, this is. I just want to show. This is our latest urban farm. It's about 3 acres worth. It's at Burnham Thorpe Collegiate out in the west end of the city, off of the 427. So you can see the track, and just to the south is this big swath of green. That whole area has been turned into an urban farm, and this is part of what they're doing. So you can say, once again, storage is important. The containers, there's lots of levels of approvals. I see that Jen. Oh, as far as the pizza oven, yeah, pizza ovens are not just something you ask for. It's a lot of work, fire regulations, everything. So sorry about that. Thanks, Jen, for reminding us about that. But yeah, so this is a pretty extensive level of a farm or food garden they've done. So I would say this is almost at a professional level. So that's keep that in mind. But it's a great place if you're ever going to go visit. There's some great food, like I said, Packed and Green Thumbs Growing Kids. It's some great uh, different scales of gardens that are happening out there. So what can we do at our level? So, we were talking about smaller scale, and being an previous evergreen consultant, our mantra was start small, do it well. So what the idea of stock tanks and raised planters does, it allows that it's a great planting. They're great for planting. Believe it or not, they're easier. You just don't get as many weeds. To be honest with you, you can control your environment a little bit better. They're movable, they're heavy, but they can be moved. So with these are easy wins, because you don't, because they're portable, they don't need the levels of approvals that you would normally need for something else. So yes, you can put in ground like raised planters or gardens, but the minute you're planting it into soil, then we have a concern with soil contamination. So it's the requirements for soil testing, and if anybody knows how to read a soil test, let me know, because you have to be able to understand, to know what you're asking for, and how to read something like that. So there's a level of care that you have to be cognizant of when you're planting in the ground, and it also becomes more of a permanent fixture. So really, if you want a quick win, these are reasonable costs. You can grow great things in it. If you want to shut them down for the summer, you shut them down and plant, on the shoulder season. So there's lots of opportunities for different types of plantings and management of these, and they look pretty cool. I think in our resource, we North York Farmers is where we recommend. I think they're one of our vendors too, Gail, do you know? And I think
Yeah.
they come in different sizes, different shapes. And so they're, they're just, and they look really cool. And
Karen, we'll make sure we send out the link to everybody on the information sheets that you folks have prepared on these, which are excellent.
yeah, okay. Yeah. So, so this is why we want to be able to give you some quick ideas of how you guys can establish your own gardens. And it doesn't mean it doesn't limit or stop you from thinking bigger picture, but you know what, start small, do it well, learn. It's a learning opportunity, and getting it right is challenging. And also making sure you've got the summer pieces in place if you plan to operate something like this over the summer. So these are, it's a bigger, they're simple, so they can run more simply, but the bigger you go, the more thought that goes into it as well. So, okay. Is there anything else of this, Gail? Yeah, go ahead, Gail.
Okay, so points to remember: to look at the school site holistically. That's what we were trying to say through this presentation, is that, there are pieces to a puzzle, but if you can look at the overall site and really try to see what works on your school grounds. Often there's a pretty good tree inventory, and the TDSB has tree maps. We've been working on doing inventory of the TDSB trees since, I think it's close to 20 years now. So those are available, and I think it's a great opportunity for learning for students to see what is on their school grounds. So and there's often hidden gems everywhere on the school grounds. And I've said it before, but do your research. See what has been done at the school. I know staff changes a lot, but often if you have any questions about that, we can help you out. We can have access to historical information that's been done on the school grounds, and we're happy to share that. And then often there's plans in the work, because it's such a big board. There's different staff levels, there's facilities. There might be a project going on that for whatever reason you may not be familiar with, and we can help you look into that too. But it's important to see what's being planned for the school grounds. And again, I keep saying it, but planning before starting any project is really worthwhile to make sure that the project is sustainable over the long term. And I can't say it enough, that planning is really key, as is patience. It's a big place. It's a big place, and we all really want what's best for our students. I didn't say it at the beginning, but we really, really are trying to look at all of our projects through an equity lens. And that's challenging, but it's what we need to all be doing. Mm-hmm. And there's, as we all know, there's a lot of inequality that needs to be addressed on the school grounds, and we're working pretty hard to try to do that. So often we're trying to deal with the highest needs school grounds and provide them with opportunities that they just don't have access to. So
happy questions, Gail, in the chat. I think you folks win the award for having the most questions ever in a chat.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. There you go.
So we have questions about rain barrels.
Yeah, I didn't get to the rain barrels. Sorry. Okay.
Me neither.
Yeah. So here's the thing with rain barrels. I appreciate the idea. Often rain barrels. I mean, I think the intention, if I'm not mistaken, with rain barrels is to link them to a downspout. Well, most of the downspouts at the TDSB schools are internal, so they can't be. You're not going to see them on the outside of any school grounds or any buildings. There's a safety concern with rain barrels, so we generally don't see them on school grounds. There's maintenance issues, there's safety issues, there's mosquitoes. There's a lot of things that we think about, so we generally don't recommend them.
And we've also had, I'm just tracking back, we have so many questions, it's been hard to follow through on them all. Asking about the planters. Adrian's wondering if you can put the planters on the outside of school fencing, or if they would have to go on the inside. She's wondering specifically about beautifying parking lots, for example.
Parking lots? That's a first.
Oh, well, I would.
That's wow. Okay. Well, that's an interesting one. I,
A couple of answers. A couple things that come to my mind right off the bat is, maybe keeping it on, know where your property line is. Is it on the other side of is it on city property or is it on TDSB property? And the other thing is, if it's in a parking lot, you should know where the snow is if the snow is being plowed or piled, it could be in that spot. It can get damaged. And so those are just some things you might want to be aware of if that's the case. But yeah, and just knowing if it's close to the edge of a curb, is it going to get backed into and damaged? Is kind of some of the things I'd think about right off the bat. But yeah, I don't know.
We just worked on one of the schools, the TDSB schools downtown, that Gail very kindly helped us with a plan for the garden. The other thing I would say is make sure you're near a watering source. Those dry out very quickly in hot weather.
Yeah,
that's
know where
key.
your hose bib is. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to be schlepping barrels and barrels, or buckets and buckets of water to, halfway across the schoolyard just to water them.
Okay, more questions?
And there was a question earlier from Michelle about BCD schools. Can you talk a little bit about
bees.
why we aren't developing things like bee hotels for schoolyards these days?
That came from health and safety, I think.
Yeah, it did. We really cannot encourage any kind of bee habitat at TDSB schools because of students' allergies. There's some students that are severely allergic to bee stings, and we cannot be promoting any kind of habitat that in any way would harm students. So that's why.
But Gail, popping in native plant species, I'm thinking about Rudbeckia or Echinacea. I mean, bees love them, but they're native plants, which is a good way to go in our gardens. Does that mean that we can't plant native plant species that would bring pollinator species?
No, we don't say you can't plant them, but we don't. Okay, here's an analogy that's because I'm going to kind of move away from bees. Logs in kindergarten spaces, students love to climb on, jump on, do all that. And they're labeled as seating features. But students use them for all kinds of different things. It's kind of the analogy of pollinators. We're just not going to say that we're going to be attracting bees, but there are going to be pollinator species. Just sort of read between the lines there. Yeah.
I will say that I want to put in a plug for TD Friends of the Environment Foundation. If you're looking for funding for plantings, they don't help with things like playground structures, but they do give money to help schoolyards plant and native plant species in particular. They're fantastic, and they've been very generous with schools across the city.
And I would recommend that. Yeah, is TD one of our? Are we allowed to? It's being okay. So it's one that we can definitely support, and I would suggest that if you would like some help, do it before you apply so that we can give you what happens is we get lots of requests right now, which is our busy time, and sometimes they've already got the money and then they're looking for some support, and it's very difficult for us to provide what they need. Usually if it is a pollinator garden, we're so helpful in November. We will do whatever, honestly. So think about timing and when people are busy and when we're busy, but we will go out of our way for you in December and even January. But come this time, it's very difficult for us to give you the support when you need it right now. So yeah, so plan ahead. That's the secret. Once again, it's planning, plan. Think about it early. Don't necessarily chase the money. Get the have a thought, a plan, and an idea in mind, and then chase the money. So,
and having worked with two schools that actually turned to the children to help with that dreaming, it's a really fun inquiry project for students to get involved in, to dream a little bit about what's possible, and then to follow through with the research about what actually is possible, because they love the idea of hot tubs and roller coasters and all sorts of things in their schoolyards, but having them actually do the legwork to discover what's actually possible in their schoolyards is a really great cross-curricular learning project for them.
It is. So it's really true. Yeah. And then really trying to explain why, like we always try to say, this is possible and this is why this is not possible. We really want to support schools, and we want really the very best opportunities that we can provide. And if we can't provide something, there's usually a pretty good reason why.
Yeah. Gail, I noticed someone put in there about there's a school near them that's a B school, and I know for a fact that school was told that they cannot be a B school. So if you see it out there, it's not because it's been authorized.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. It's very true.
We should also put in a plug for our friend Sunday Harrison, who
Yeah.
is doing some wonderful work with growing native plants, native trees, excuse me, from seeds. Sunday, do you want to talk about that just for a sec?
Hi, Sunday.
Oh, I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, we're doing a Trees from Seed program, and it's a kit that teachers can pick up, and they get an online program with our fantastic garden educator. The trees that we're growing include the Kentucky coffee tree, which comes with a great story. It's kind of an ice age tree, but it's kind of, it was native here, but like a long time ago. And now we're also working with a group that plants red and black oak from old growth trees in Toronto. And they're looking for tree nurseries on school property and looking for forever homes for these trees grown from seed, which promotes biodiversity in the species, a huge piece in terms of climate change as well, because we want that gene pool to be wide and deep.
Thank you, Sunday. And thanks for mentioning in the chat that the City of Toronto also has a pollinator program that you might be able to get seeds from for other things, other types of plants. And the Toronto Seed Library gives away free seeds. Now, I'm not sure how they're doing it with libraries closed right now. You'd have to go on their website to find that out, but you can also get free seeds for native plant species through the Toronto Seed Library. So I'm sensitive that we are at 5:05, which is already 5 past what we had aimed for at 5 o'clock. So at this point, I would like to thank Gail and Karen, if you can join me in giving them a little round of digital applause for their presentation today. That's so informative. And I know for people who are dreaming about the return to school grounds and planning school gardens, that this has been incredibly informative. So thank you, Gail. Thank you.
Our pleasure.
I also just want to put very quickly in a plug for our upcoming webinars, because we will be continuing the conversation about educational gardening into May and into June. So we've got the next of these webinars coming up is on May 19th at 4 o'clock. And this is going to be a really exciting one, because we're going to be having TDSB students talking about the climate action that they're taking in their schools. And they, having just heard our presentation at the Ecom conference last week about this, it is astounding what some students are able to do. So we're looking forward to that one. And thanks to Jen Vetter for organizing. And we've also got one about growing authentic learning in educational gardens. After seeing all of these inspiring examples that Gail and Karen have brought in today, we're going to be having some teachers talk about how they actually use their school grounds for cross-curricular learning on May 31st. We will be continuing to have lots of webinars through June and into July. And so we'll send you the link out as part of this session today to where you can access upcoming events. I also just want to point out that starting last year, we did a number of, because I know all TDSB teachers are currently working online with their students, we did a number of webinars last spring. Connecting outdoor education to online learning was one. We did a couple on nature journaling, which is a great way to start getting students attuned to nature, but doing that from a distance as you're not together. And we did another one, a couple of them, in fact, eco-teaching and e-learning. So those are all available in the archive, and we'll make sure we send you that link as well. So thank you so much for joining us today. Lovely to have you all here, and we hope to see you at future webinars as well. If you have any further questions for Gail or Karen, just stay in the room once we've ended the recording, and I'm sure they'll be happy to answer those for you.